The earth does not forgive the bold. You arm yourself with courage and launch yourself without hesitation into the primitive jungle, where the air exudes mystery and danger, and every breath is a challenge to your own survival. Imagine crossing a temporal portal and stepping into a world where life not only existed, but roared with brutal intensity, where the environment, charged with almost lethal oxygen, turned every moment into a battle for life. It is in this setting that the story unfolds, a raw and relentless narrative that invites you to experience the height of nature in its most primitive state, where the strength and beauty of life intertwine in a dance of extremes. The trip begins with an explosion of sensations: the damp smell of the earth, the incessant sound of leaves being dragged by the wind, and the diffuse glow of a light that can barely penetrate the thick canopy of ancient trees. The forests of the Carboniferous period stretched without limits, forming a labyrinth of giant ferns, towering gymnosperms and mosses that covered the ground like a living carpet. In this universe, the abundance of oxygen, which was close to 35%, made each heartbeat more intense, each movement more vibrant, but it also carried with it a hidden danger. The energy released by this excess could turn into burning flames, corroding the delicate structures of the lungs and skin of the unwary. Walking through this world was not just an adventure, it was a lesson in the fragility and strength of life. Without the herbivores we know today to moderate the advance of plants, vegetation spread without control, dominating every inch of the planet with its wild exuberance. The enormous leaves, arranged in dense layers, created deep shadows where predators hid, and the spores, thrown into the wind, ensured that each new sprout emerged with the same almost explosive intensity as its surrounding environment. It was a time when every being, every molecule, pulsed with the primitive energy of a world in constant mutation. Among the giants of the forest, insects and arthropods defied the logic of time. Imagine creatures with wings that stretched to unbelievable proportions, flying with almost surreal freedom, while segmented, articulated bodies roamed the understory with deadly efficiency. Among these, the arthropod pleura stood out, a being almost 2.5 meters long, whose presence commanded respect even from those who dared to approach it. Although harmless in its diet, its mere presence revealed how extraordinary that period was, where the laws of nature were balanced so delicately that any imbalance could transform peace into chaos. Equipped with a respiratory protection device and the courage necessary to face the unknown, you find yourself immersed in a scenario of intense contrasts. On the one hand, the breathtaking beauty of the forests, where each plant seemed to tell the story of bygone eras, with its twisted forms and saturated colors. On the other, the constant danger represented by cunning predators that camouflage themselves in the shadows. Amphibians, who seemed to have come out of a nightmare, lurked at the edge of the swamps, ready to ambush any being that crossed their path. These animals, with bodies that mixed features of crocodiles and frogs, used slowness and cunning as weapons, making each encounter a lesson in survival and respect. The environment, however, was not limited to terrestrial danger. As you venture into the shallow waters of the ancient seas, you come face to face with an equally unforgiving reality. Gigantic fish glided silently beneath the surface, and sea predators, with powerful jaws and hungry eyes, patrolled the reefs in search of their next prey. Sea scorpions and mollusks with enigmatic shells made up an ecosystem as diverse as it was lethal, where the beauty of movement contrasted with the latent threat of a sudden attack. Trilobites, remnants of an even earlier time, roamed in groups, offering a glimpse of an era when every life form fought mightily to leave its mark on Earth's history. As you continue through the jungle, you realize that each element of that universe is part of an intricate evolutionary mosaic, where the continents came together to form the Grand Pangaea. This territorial immensity allowed the dispersion of spores over unimaginable distances, transforming the planet into a single gigantic biome, where diversity mixed with uniformity in surprising harmony. The landscapes, despite their apparent monotony, held ancient secrets. Every fallen trunk, every stone covered in moss was a silent witness to epic battles fought between primordial forces. The earth itself pulsed with the energy of cycles of creation and destruction, where the mass extinction of certain species opened space for the emergence of others in a constant renewal that defied time. The dangers, however, were not limited to large predators or natural threats in the environment. Microorganisms, primitive and unknown, circulated in countless numbers, ready to trigger unexpected reactions in the body of an unsuspecting visitor. Interaction with these invisible beings could be fatal, as the modern immune system was not prepared to face the challenges posed by such rudimentary forms of life. Every contact, every breath, was a bet for survival, a reminder that, in those times, the line between life and death was thin and implacable. The experience of living in this remote era is not just a physical adventure, but a deep immersion into the essence of existence. The environment, with its almost hypnotic beauty and its constant dangers, teaches that evolution is a brutal and magnificent process at the same time. The mass extinction that gradually swept through the forests of the Carboniferous period was not an end, but the prelude to the emergence of new forms of life, more complex and adapted to the conditions that were imposed. Each fossil, each layer of coal deposited over the millennia, carries the memory of a time when the Earth was a stage for the most intense evolutionary dramas, where the success or failure of a species was measured in moments of pure, vital energy. The immensity of this past extends across varied scenarios, where land and waters are transformed into natural battlefields. As you enter the depths of the swamps, you find yourself surrounded by an atmosphere full of mystery, where the density of vegetation and the muffled sound of the environment create a feeling of isolation and reverence. Each tree, each creeping plant, seems to have its own story, shaped by time and the inexorable force of nature. And even if the modern visitor, armed with technology and knowledge, feels prepared to face the challenges, the truth is that the primitive force of this world can never be fully dominated or understood. The journey continues through the most inhospitable corners, where the fight for survival manifests itself in details that reveal themselves at each step. On the banks of turbulent rivers, where the waters carry sediments and secrets from ages past, intimidating-looking amphibians silently wait to surprise the unwary. These beings, which mix traits of ancient reptiles with characteristics of modern amphibians, represent an era in which evolution experienced unusual and surprising paths. At the same time, in the depths of the shallow seas, life unfolds in a spectacle of colors and shapes, where predators and prey face each other in a violent and, at times, beautiful choreography, revealing the intrinsic duality of existence. As the landscape transforms and challenges accumulate, you become an integral part of a cycle that transcends time. Each encounter with a predator, each evasion of a natural trap, is a lesson in the impermanence and adaptability of life. Nature, in its purest essence, knows no mercy. She just follows her laws, relentless and surprising. Thus, the modern traveler cannot help but marvel at the strength of this primitive universe, where beauty and danger are inextricably intertwined, creating a scenario that, although hostile, is also deeply inspiring. At the end of this journey, reflection becomes inevitable. What have we learned from going through such a remote time? That existence is a series of constant challenges, where each victory is won with effort and each defeat paves the way for a new form of rebirth. The Carboniferous period, with its endless forests and colossal creatures, was not just an age of extremes. It was the cradle of life as we know it, where the foundations of evolution were laid with determination and energy. This experience reminds us that humanity, no matter how advanced it is, remains just a small part of a vast and grand story, where every breath of nature tells a narrative of struggle, beauty, and transformation. And so, as you move away from that distant past, carrying in your memory the image of a wild and untamed earth, you are certain that the true power of life lies precisely in this ability to reinvent yourself in the face of the most merciless challenges. The primeval wilderness, with its innumerable dangers and hidden wonders, teaches us that to survive and thrive, we must respect and understand the essence of the forces that shape the world. In every breathless breath, in every cautious step, the message is clear. Life is a constant struggle, a vibrant dance between creation and destruction. And those who dare to face this challenge encounter not only risk, but also the true essence of existence. This story, which spans the corridors of time, is an invitation for us to never forget our origins, for us to understand that progress is not the denial of the past, but rather the recognition of the audacious steps that brought us here. When returning to modernity, with all its comforts and advances, there is an echo of a world where every element, no matter how primitive, possessed a raw and indomitable beauty. And so, as the echoes of that distant past resonate in our minds, we are reminded that ultimately the true journey lies not in escaping dangers, but in learning to live in harmony with the eternal forces that govern nature.